Diablo 4 Season 4. Is it finally good? No, obviously not. I played it, I got bored in less than 20 minutes when I logged in the first time, and in 30 minutes when I logged in the second time. I'm gonna try and make a druid and see, maybe that's gonna be interesting, but there are a lot of problems.
Okay, Diablo 4 Season 4. Is it fun? What do I think about it? It's been out for about 48 hours now. I've been playing it for about 28 hours worth of gameplay. This is character number 2 because the first one died. So let's talk about my experience. The very first part people are going to want to know is the itemization. It's literally called Loot Reborn because it's focusing on the items. They have the tempering, they have the masterworking in it. How does this feel? First thing to talk about is the affixes. They have removed a bunch of the annoying affixes and replaced them with common affixes. So now, more or less, almost every piece of gear you see is going to be like your main stat, max life, percentage damage, or
AKA, there are no interesting affixes left in the game. Okay, so let's go through a thought experiment, shall we? Before the loot rework, what were the problems for Diablo 4's items? We all know them, right? We can probably all agree with them, right? They were boring, they were bad, we needed a loot filter, right? Those were pretty much the common things. Am I missing anything? No, I don't think so. So, the Loot Reborn system set out to fix these things. So what did they do? They changed the affixes, which is good, that's what we wanted, right? But they changed the affixes to essentially every line being just plus more damage. Okay, we asked to change the affixes and make them better, but who the hell asked them to make the loot simpler? I never heard anyone complain about Diablo 4 loot affixes being too complicated or anything. So, why did they rework the affixes to be simpler? That is my question. And I can already tell that the game's suffering from it.
or resistances, life per second if it's a defensive item. They're going to repeat the same stats, like willpower, life per second. Okay.
Yes, because there's effectively 4 stats now in the game.
Willpower, max life, life on hit, willpower, life on hit, vulnerable damage, willpower, maximum life damage percentage, willpower, maximum life armor. You're going to see a lot of the same stats now. Does this feel better than seeing a lot of really weird, long name stats? Yes, actually it does. For the most bit, I just want stats.
Yes, it does obviously feel better. But what do you do now with this, where everything effectively is the same stat? Well, not much, that's the problem.
That's how I know we're going to be good anyway, so it removes me farming through and destroying items that are basically just garbage, and most items tend to be usable. Since there's only 3 stats now, and you can enchant one of them, the odds are 2 of those 3 stats are probably going to be pretty good because there's not really that many affixes. What about the tempering? Well, the way this works is you have with an ancestor item at the end, and that's all that really matters, because let's be honest, leveling is super fast now. You're going to get to ancestral gear very quickly, and you can equip it as soon as level 55. And
yes, so the crafting is not going to be used, and it doesn't matter until you get to that point. Again, I have said this before, world tiers are complete garbage and should just be removed from the game.
You can also basically beat the capstone at level 55 anyway to get into World Tier 4, because the dungeon bosses for the capstone, at least right now, are kind of a joke. You can walk through them because your power is so inflated. So you can get to tempering 2 affixes on an ancestor item, 1 on a sacred and standard item. And how does this work? Well, you can only pick certain 2 recipes. For instance, if you are a glove, you can do offensive utility. If you're boots, you can do mobility utility. If you're a defensive item, it's defensive utility. And if you're a weapon, it's offensive and weapons, for instance. You can...
Just so you're not overwhelmed with the options, you know, just because Blizzard think of you as an absolute mouth breather.
Re-temper an item. So let's say I wanted to put on like a storm augment, all right, and I didn't get the one I want. I got wind shear projectile to cast twice. Don't want that one, so I can re-roll it and try to get a different one to get the one I want. Chance for wind spear again. You can re-roll the same one. Didn't want that one. Re-roll it again, and this time I get again wind spear. Okay, so we go one more time, and this time I got wind shear one more time. We're going to go again, and now we got hurricane duration. let's say I like hurricane duration. So yes, it can be a little annoying because you can literally reroll the same one over and over again, and you only get 5 temper rerolls. But for the most bit, you can get a stat that you want on most of your items. This feels fine. Then you can add on your secondary stat. There you go. Tempering, hurricane damage. Now I have hurricane duration, hurricane damage. Tempering feels fine for the most
180% hurricane damage. Nice one, Blizzard. Nice.
bit. I do find myself mostly using and liking tempering to add on resistances. For instance, resistances actually work now, and with armor being 9,230 is the cap, getting your defensive layers are pretty easy. So you just put this in here.
Not easy. It's meaningless now. It is absolutely meaningless now.
You go to defensive, you go to natural resistance, and you can add on your resistance you want. It's going to roll up to 50%. That paired with the fact that you can go to enchanting, and if you really need resistances, you can put on a pair of these here, go to enchant item, and re-roll this, and then you could get resistance just like that, fire resistance. So now you can get resistances pretty quickly, aka getting the defenses you need is pretty fast to do. Tempering's also got some...
It's so fast and so nonsensical, it might as well start you off with max defense, effectively. Very fun.
pretty cool stats, like
-1 in character creation in general. Like, defensives don't matter because you're capped always.
hurricane duration's an interesting one because I can just keep my hurricane up for longer, or hurricane size, for instance. But, you know, chance for tornado projectiles to cast twice, considering I'm using the werewolf tornado build, is actually really good. So some of these are actually like kind of crazy, and flat damage is even better than it ever used to be. They buff flat damage in the game, and you can see there's actually like chance to deal flat damage on this one too. Some of these are actually really crazy with the utility. Like, a lot of your items are going to have utility on them because, for instance, these defensive items can only have defense and utility, and that's only 2 of them, and you can have 2 temper anyway. So you're going to have a utility, and one of the utilities on these is either like thorns, crowd duration, etc. Wolves attack speed, but these ones are cool. Worldly Fortune, you have a chance to slow, immobilize, stun, or freeze enemies. And you can have this stacking on multiple of these, so you either have a chance to slow, immobilize, stun, or freeze them, and you can have one of each of them, meaning that if you have something that makes it where you do bonus damage based upon it for their crowd control, like I do here as a druid, you can actually use this as a way to sort of pseudo-ramp your damage. So that's actually pretty cool. Masterworking is also pretty simple. You go in there, you get your 5% affix every time. You get that from just leveling up it, doing the pit over and over again, which is greater rifts, and blasting through greater rifts is actually pretty fun. We'll talk about the greater rifts here in just a second, or the pit as they're called.
Yeah, effectively since season 4, the overworld, it doesn't exist anymore. Have fun. There's only hell tides. God, I have to say, it's just... So, Season of Discovery at Phase 3 added Nightmare Incursions, which is the fastest and best way to level up. But everyone hates it because you're essentially doing just the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And it gets really tedious, really boring. And while the Hell Tides are better now, arguably, well, not arguably too good, but there are situations in Hell Tides where you're, okay, my inventory is full, I want to go back to town, and monsters spawn on top of you, and you can't even make it back to town. And they still haven't made it that cinders automatically get picked up if they drop. You still need to go over them. Now, admittedly, they did the stupidest thing ever. They increased the range. Like, just make it so the cinders instantaneously go into the cinder thing pile, whatever. Come on, how hard is that? Not hard at all. Come on. Do it, Blizzard, please. Like, why increase the range? Just make them automatically pickable, uppable.
In this game, Masterworking feels fine. This is where you're going to get your dopamine in an attempt to hit exactly the one you want, because there's now greater affixes in the game. The greater affixes are your dopamine drops when you actually receive them. This is probably my favorite part of the itemization change, which is that the greater affixes make it feel like when you get an item, you're like, you have that, oh shit moment, that one's got double greater affix or whatever. And they can be somewhat pseudo rare. So this actually makes you feel like every now and then you're looking forward to looking at an item, like you're about to hover it over in your inventory, like, oh, what actually is it? Oh, it's damage greater affix or what have you. So the items, to wrap up the item conversation, the items feel better than they did before. It is much less annoying is the way that I would say it, which is going to be a key word. They cut out a lot of like the annoying stuff in the game, which we'll talk about in a moment.
Again, you could have the same effect with a loot filter, but you had the ability to actually, implement new affixes and, make stuff better and whatnot, make builds more interesting. But instead, Blizzard just chose to, well, effectively just give you plus damage on everything or plus life on everything. So, again, have fun.
Moment too. So itemization for me, yeah, that's a W. However, they did add one more annoying thing back into the game, which is that getting your sockets on your gear here is very hard to get these actually prism pieces, at least early in the game. Okay, I want to add a socket. Guess what? I got 2 of these things. So you can get them from World Boss, etc., but you have to be very careful about actually adding your sockets because those materials are fairly rare.
Don't worry. If something's hard to get, Blizzard is just gonna make it that, you have an infinity amount of them.
At least in my 28 hours, I've had a combined total between all my characters of acquiring 3 of these. So they simplified gems, but then made it like kind of hard to put the gems in the actual gear. Not a big deal, but something I noticed.
It's stupid.
Also, extracting gear is way simpler now. You just salvage it to actually be able to extract. So if I just go like this and click extract here, let me mark this so I don't extract that one. If I go like extract, you're going to see it's going to update my codex. And now my codex of power here has been updated with whatever.
You know what's hilarious about the Codex of Power?
For the highest tier roll.
Go down, DM. Go down.
The gear I just added was. So
go down. Keep going down.
Really good quality of life.
This
was done very, very.
He doesn't do it, okay? You know what's funny about the Codex of Power? So, for example, aspect of elements. If you do not have aspect of elements unlocked in the Codex, you know what aspect of elements says? It says, to unlock aspect of elements, you need to find an item with aspect of elements. And every single thing that you have not unlocked has that on it. It's kind of hilarious.
Really good quality of life. This was done very, very well. And now, when you're either trying to actually extract gear, you can just do it through the salvage. And when you're actually trying to imprint gear, then it's a lot easier too, because you just go here and you click on Codex and you can like literally search for what you want. I immediately found myself using the Codex power change. So this was one of the best quality of life changes in the season. Okay, enough about like...
Yeah, a thing that we were asking from season 1, by the way. Yeah, it took a while, didn't it?
Like the items, how does the game actually play? Well, if you're like everyone else that's playing the game right now, you're going to spend all of your time in the Helltide from about level 1 to 70, just leveling as fast as you can. That is because they have cranked, jacked the tits out of the amount of monsters that are available in the Helltide. So it is...
Yeah, if you're doing anything but Helltide, you're an idiot.
Very fast experience.
Well, the Legion events are also good and whatnot, obviously, but you get the point.
Now, you might be thinking to yourself, isn't this quite literally what we've been doing for 4 seasons, just killing monsters and leveling up? Weren't people saying the level 1 to 100 was kind of like a boring grind? And I would answer, yeah, you're right. Like, basically, this is more or less the same thing we've been doing, but now why are people enjoying it? It's because what happened was, 1, they shrunk the grind, so it's not as long.
I don't know if I'm enjoying it. I would argue I'm not enjoying it at all. It's really meticulous, tedious, and, kind of just dull.
But 2 is the gaps of time that you're spending that are making it annoying to do the grind have been shortened. So before, going from World Tier 2 to 3 took a while, from 3 to 4.
By the way, the small orbs that are dropping, I think that's a bug. Because they drop so much and they deal so much damage.
4 took a while, but that grind is much, much faster. So the amount of like, okay, I need to get to X level, and then
And these orbs were a vampiric pulver originally.
can do this thing has been shrunk down. So you're not getting as annoyed because you're kind of distracted from the fact that you're basically just grinding again. On top of it, the grind itself is kind of fun.
The grind itself is kind of dull because it's the same thing. It never changes. It's literally all the same things. It's all the same things constantly over and over again. It's the most repetitive stuff ever. The Diablo 4 devs looked at incursions and they said, "Oh my god, this is amazing!" in Season of Discovery. Holy! And, they implemented the same thing. I wonder if Blizzard has some kind of default things to implement in games book or something. Because they do it across all the franchise. They do the same shit. They implement extremely repetitive tasks.
Fun, because it really was as simple as throw a fuckload of monsters at you, and actually fighting them is going to be more enjoyable. On top of
That is true, but again, this is still kind of annoying because it never changes. It's always the same exact sequence of everything. They didn't even include variety on what happens here.
it, they seem to have ramped the power of your characters through the fact that we're getting
The only good part about this event is that at no point stupid pillars spawn at, further away locations and you need to destroy them. Like, God, they need to remove all the destroy pillar activity BS things.
all these primary stats, etc. So you feel really strong while you're doing it. This has led some people to say that the season is incredibly easy. But my way of explaining this would be, it gave it like a BBL. Like basically it sucked the
I mean, it is incredibly easy.
fat out of the stomach of this and added it to the ass end of the game. So now the difficulty of the game is not in 1 to 100 because that's where their audience retention was shrinking. People weren't hitting level 100. They were quitting in like the 70s and the 80s and getting...
Yeah, but that's a stupid thing. That's the thing. People were not hitting level 100. There's not a problem. People are not hitting level 100 because it's too boring to get level 100. That's the problem. Making it faster is not going to change the fact. People are not hitting level 100 because it's boring. But when you hit level 100, guess what? You're still doing the same things over and over again. In the same exact order. There's literally only one way mobs can spawn in this event. They even spawn always in the same locations.
board. So they thought, get everyone to level 100 and then add the grind at the ass of the game, which is basically the pits. The hardest content we've ever had in the game was AOZ 25, which is no longer in the game. But AOZ 25 is scaled equally to pit 150. The pit goes up to 200. Therefore, it scales higher than anything we've had before. However, your character does get stronger as well as compared to the previous seasons. Now, in order to activate the pit, you have to clear a Nightmare Dungeon tier 46. So you still have to at least do one Nightmare Dungeon. I myself personally would rather just do the pit over the Nightmare Dungeon. However,
yeah, no one likes Nightmare Dungeons. How many times have we talked about this? They're a failure in design. And why are they a failure in design? Because people who care more about talking about how gay and lesbian they are designing those things. Literally, there's a video on it. I'm not joking. They got the Diablo level designers to talk about the game, and they ended up talking about how much they loved their LBGB rainbow things.
right now I am in a Nightmare Dungeon, and the reason is because you still have to level your Paragon Glyph experience. For this reason, you're still going to need to farm your Nightmare Dungeons. So more than likely, your experience is going to be doing Helltides from like 1 to 70 if you're just trying to level as fast as possible, which is decently fun. And then you're going to be doing the Nightmare Dungeons from 70 to 100, which in my opinion is not very fun. But at the 100 plus, then you get to have fun again by doing the pits and then progressing towards basically Uber boss.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good way to say it, but that's still an objective failure of design.
Etc. That is at least if you're trying to be efficient in terms of power of your character. You're not required to stay towards this. And in fact, I would probably encourage you not to just sit there and grind over and over and over again in the Helltide.
Do you think the average person is going to do Nightmare Dungeons? I don't think so. I think the average person is going to be doing Helltides until 100.
The amount of experience that you get in the
and quit at around level 70.
Game now has been ramped up. So you don't necessarily need to just stick to one thing. In fact, I probably wouldn't recommend it because you need gold, for instance, which is going to come from Whispers, and the gold's going to be from Masterworking later. You're going to need Obdicite, which you can get from the pit. So maybe grind till you can do tier 50 or so of the Nightmare Dungeon, then do some pit for a little bit, get to get the Obdicite for the Masterworking. I would say try to mix up the variety a little bit, or else you run the risk of burning out. Overall, the world's the most alive that I've seen it. The most amount of players in the game that I've seen in a while. I'm constantly running.
True, but this is still less than in Season 2 even.
Into people and you run into them all the time because everyone's farming.
Yeah, again, I think this video is going to get backlash because at this point, I said Diablo 4 dies on Season 4 because there's no turning back from this. So, yeah, I think at this point it's just Diablo 4 is just going to be The only people who care about it are going to be people who literally are going to eat slop and be thankful for it and ask more from Blizzard. And no one else is going to even remember about Diablo 4 in like a month or whatever. Maybe when the expansion comes out, but yeah, Diablo 4 is visibly, effectively dead at this point.
In the Helltide, and that's just an overworld piece. So I feel like I'm actually in the Diablo 4 overworld more than I am just getting stuck in the instances all the time. It's factually better than the other seasons because the way the level in the other seasons was basically resetting dungeons, which was horrible. Or if you weren't doing that, then you were getting such slow experience that you were getting bored even trying to level up. So now they got us out of the dungeons, put us into the overworld, put a bunch of minions in front of us, and just said, okay, look, everyone's going to sit there and try the level anyway, so get through it, blast some minions in the Helltide. And then the bonus part about this is you're getting all kinds of materials like boss.
Oh yeah, he reminded me, blast some minions. The Helltide seems almost too much blasting to a degree. Almost, honestly, too much. I know it's a strange thing to say, and I don't really mean it in that way that it's too much. But I want to say that Helltide is a little bit too much. It constantly tries to give you something to hit. It just tries too much, you know? It just tries too much.
Boss materials, so you can slot in doing some bosses. The cinders are fairly generous now, so you're able to actually get legendary items, the consumables you need for like potion leveling, etc., and you're able to get boss materials. They also drop you a ton of elixirs now as well in the game, so you're constantly able to have an elixir up, and you also have enough.
Yeah, but who cares about the elixirs? I'm like, you know, at best I click with one randomly.
Consumables to make incense as well. Then that plus the earn experience you get for the seasonal journey is enough to definitely keep you blasting through the levels. There definitely has been a focus on like quality of life or things that will stop you from being annoyed.
Oh yeah, you can actually use mount speed in the city.
Like they're trying to remove annoying things. Like now you can actually use the horse and you can actually speed up the horse while it's in the town. This is something that when you're playing before, you're like, why can't I use my horse in town? And then you can use the horse in town. Why can't I sprint with my horse in town? It's like the previously where they made it where you could blast through the barricades with your horse. They looked at things that were making people quit the game. And they basically said, we've got to remove the things that are pissing people off about the game at a minimum before we make the game have tons and tons.
Yeah, and make it the most casual, friendly game in existence.
And tons of content. We at least have to make the game stop actively making people want to quit. And that's really what the season feels like. They went through, they found the moments in audience retention where players were dipping down in boredom, and they gutted those moments and squished them together. Okay, then they threw it.
Now, I agree with this, but the problem is, again, we have talked about this. There's nothing even to talk about Diablo 4 at this point. All their failures are blanketly visible at this point and undeniable. So, you have a game that has millions of players, literally the best-selling game that they ever had, right? What do you do in this situation? Well, when the people start saying all as goddamn one that something's bad about the game, they literally point at it. Again, there was a time when I gave constructive criticism about Diablo 4, but I'm long past that. It doesn't matter at this point. It just doesn't matter. You know, people were telling them what's wrong with the game. What did Blizzard do? They doubled down and ignored what people said. They did what they thought was right, and everyone hated it. And so, with each season, they added more things, they nerfed experience, they did these things, and people left because game shit. Makes sense, right? People continued to leave as bad decisions were made, as more bad decisions were made, and thus, the game is currently at a bare minimum of player base. And the only people that are playing are people who literally could not care less what Blizzard actually does with Diablo 4. They're going to keep playing. They're going to be eating the shit, they're going to be slurping the slop, and they're going to be happy about it. And they're now listening to these people. Yeah, they start listening when it's too late. When the only people left are the people you should not listen to. And then, here we are. Here we are.
put on the ass end of it with the pits, etc., and then jacked it up to give you something to do at the end of the game. Then they looked at things that were pissing people off in terms of annoyance, like the Codex or inventory space, or the affix is not
Yeah, you know, the things that we have been saying since the beginning of the game, before even Season 1 actually dropped. Yeah, those things.
making
Took
a
a
lot of
year.
sense to me. Think this is making people quit too. In my opinion, this is season 4 audience retention reborn because they looked at everything that was making people quit and making people mad, and they addressed those things.
Yes, but they're looking at what's making what's making people quit, and the people who are quitting currently are the worst available.
I'm not going to pretend that the game has like the most in-game content or anything out of any ARPG, but it's fun to play now. Is the difference. Like now
I feel that we are already literally at Diablo 3 here. It's again, Diablo 3 was also fun to play for, an hour and then you never log in again until, you're super bored, a year later and then you maybe log in for an hour again. That's Diablo 3. And this is now Diablo 4. I'm so done with this. Anyway, that was our boy DM Dark Microtransactions. Skittles. Anyway, this was Quizzers and thanks for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I mean, I'm gonna maybe get 2 more hours of Diablo 4 and gonna try a druid, giving up on the necro. I mean, Bone Spear is not fun currently. I mean, nothing's fun really. But druid maybe hopefully is gonna be a little bit better. But again, man, I thought that I'm gonna have fun for a week or two. Then season 4 is gonna come out, but it's just such mediocrity. It's just such nothingness. Nothing matters. I never thought that I'm gonna log in and in the first 20 minutes of gameplay I'm gonna be like, this is fucking boring. I'm just mindlessly killing mobs without any purpose, anything. I don't know if I have 0 points to distribute in my skill twig or 20 at this point because it's just so not mattersome at the end of the day. Anyway, this was Quizzer Sid saying bye bye.